Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending today's webinar, Eagleview in Focus, Understanding Our Commitment to GIS Professionals. My name is Amy, and I'm the Operations Manager here at National State Geographic Information Council. If you are unfamiliar with our organization, NSGIC exists to advance effective national coordination of geospatial information by supporting state-level cooperation. We serve as a national forum for the development of capable and future-oriented geospatial leadership. If you'd like to learn more information and how to get involved with us, please visit our website, www.nisjic.org. Just some reminders for our call today. All attendees have been muted on entrance. There will be time at the end of the presentation for Q&A. Please place your questions into the chat box, and if they have not been answered by them, we will be read aloud so that they can be answered. Additionally, a recorded version of this webinar will be made available afterwards, so please be on the lookout for that. And with that, I will now turn it over to the presenters. Thank you for joining us. Joe?
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for your time this afternoon. We really appreciate it. My name is Joe Oddie. I'm the Director of Partner Strategies at Eagleview, or Pictometry, as many of you may know us. Really glad you're with us today. We're first-time members of NSGIC this year, and we really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you all about all that Eagleview can do to help the GIS community. I definitely understand that Eagleview/Pictometry may not be in the forefront of many of your minds when it comes to GIS and authoritative orthos, but we're here to tell you that we do all those things. And we want to share with you all the great new things we have going. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it because we got a lot of stuff to cover in the hour. As I mentioned, I manage all of our partnerships here at Eagleview. With us, we also have Claire Kiedrowski. She's in our our professional practices group as a senior photogrammetrist. She's here to talk about our certified orthos and all the processes and methodologies that go into that. And also with us is Kevin McLeod. Kevin is a regional technical manager with us living in Savannah, and he has a very unique perspective as he used to be a GIS analyst at the city of Savannah and Sagis. And now he works here with Eagleview. So he's going to talk about some use cases about how you can use the imagery in day-to-day work. So I already kind of talked about the agenda here. I'm going to kick it off and talk about Eagleview in general, some of our products, and some of how we integrate into Esri. Then we're going to get into Claire's talk a little bit about our professional services and our accuracy standards and our certified orthos. Kevin's going to come in and talk about use cases. I'm going to come back at the very end and talk a little bit about disaster response program that we have, and then we'll have about 10 minutes at the end for some Q&A. So a little bit about Eagleview Pictometry, as many of you know us in the market. We rebranded as Eagleview in 2013, but Pictometry got initiated in 1998. So we just celebrated our 25th anniversary this year, so it's pretty exciting. We really specialize in high-resolution aerial imagery and software and analytics, and we have bi-coastal headquarters in the States here. Everything we do at Eagleview is internal. We do not buy cameras. We do not buy software. We create it all ourselves. We calibrate lenses. We make our own software stacks. Everything is unique and proprietary to us. So therefore, we have a lot of patents to protect all that technology. A lot of our customers stay with us after they sign on with us because they really like our services and our products, and about 90% retention rate. Claire is going to talk a little bit about our GISPs and all of our certified staff that we have here at Eagleview. And because we've been around for 25 years, we have over 1.7 billion, with a B, images in our database that can be used across that stretch across US and Canada. And we're covering about 94% of the US population. So here's a quick map at the end of last year. This kind of shows our coverage. You can see the vast coverage we have throughout the US and Canada. And the West looks a little sparse because the West is sparse and there's not as many people out there. So therefore, we're not flying as much out that way. But you can see all the populated areas are covered. And on average, our customers are flying with us about every 2 years, some a lot more frequently than that. So the company Pictometry, as we got started, really pioneered the idea of oblique aerial photography. It really had not been done before at scale. So we really pioneered that idea and the ability to measure on that imagery. And when you look at an oblique image, some people call it side angle, some people call it oriented image, and you can spin it around from all four cardinal directions, so you can get a 360-degree view of whatever it is you're looking at, a high resolution. Everything is metric within our image. You can measure distance and area and spot lat longs. But with the fact that you have the oblique image, you can measure height, not something you can do on satellite imagery or straight down ortho. All of our imagery uses DEMS and elevation models underneath the imagery so that we can incorporate that into the obliques. When you want to turn on contour lines, when you want to measure ground slope between A and B, when you want to get a spot measurement above ground, those are all possible with our oblique imagery. And in all of our applications, you're able to do these complex measurements, not just visualize the imagery, but measure pretty much everything it is you see. Now, orthos obviously is what most of you in this attendees are used to dealing with. Orthos are king in this world, no doubt about it. Here at Eagleview, we actually offer two different types of orthos, and that may be part of some confusion that's been in the market for all these years. We do have a standard product that does not use ground control and does not use aero triangulation or photogrammetric techniques. But we do have a very large part of our customer base that do purchase certified orthos using ground control, using aerial triangulation, using photogrammetric techniques. And that's what Claire is going to speak about in a lot more detail. So I don't want to steal too much of her thunder. But those are a really, really big part of our business. And we want to share with you a little bit later how it is we do all that. As it is a use case, a lot of folks are using ortho imagery. This is a very high resolution image looking at an intersection. And if I'm doing some digitization and I need to identify features or assets in this image, I can pick out a few things, no problem. I can see manholes easily. I can see traffic poles. I can probably pick out a few other things, but a lot of others, I'm not exactly sure. We're not, here at Eagleview, we do not suggest that you switch completely to obliques. We suggest that you're using it as a supplement. So when you look at that same exact intersection, now look at all the rich detail you can pull out of that. There is, for starters, there's a fire hydrant right there. If I were to go back to that initial image, that's really hard to pick that out. Even now that I know it's there, I can kind of see it. But if I didn't know that was there, it would have a really hard time, and I might have to use other techniques to figure out where my fire hydrants are. But when you have oblique imagery, now you can clearly identify that that's a fire hydrant. With this high resolution imagery, I can clearly read street signs. That was really important for street sign inventory. Where are my signs? What are the conditions are they in? And you can see the one on the bottom as well. I can see additional signs and light poles that I couldn't see from the top-down perspective. I can understand that on the roofs of these buildings, there's a skylight and AC unit. I wasn't sure what they were before. Now I can clearly understand that. And I can see a flagpole over here in the upper right. So this is just so much more detail you can get when you do use the obliques and the orthos in tandem, not just using one or the other. And that's really the value that the oblique imagery can bring to a GIS department. When our customers sign on with us, a lot of them are from the county level, but we do have customers at the municipal level and also at the state level. Whatever level it is that contracts with us, you can share that access to that imagery laterally across all the different departments. And that's good for the use cases that are strong in public safety, tax assessment, public works, but also it helps you guys with funding partners. When you're looking to fund aerial imagery, it's not cheap, never is. But when you have multiple departments pitching in on that, then it becomes more affordable. And then you have other folks relying on it. And also we have such a vast database, 1.7 billion images. If you're just a state agency looking for imagery in, let's say, Virginia, we have a ton of imagery in Virginia and most other states, as you saw in that coverage map. So we have the ability to just basically grant you access to all of our historical library and all the current imagery that's being flown. So there's use cases not just in your department, but remember, obviously, GIS departments are oftentimes servicing all the other departments that they work with. So being an imagery provider, we can cater to a lot of those other departments. Here at Eagleview, we also do not dictate the resolution. We give that option to our customers. We let them choose because we don't just blanket fly one resolution and then say, here you go. Or, hey, we happen to fly in June and there's some leaves on the trees, here you go. We work with our customers to say when we want to fly, which is typically in a leaf-off scenario. We typically want to fly higher resolution in the populated areas, and then we can dial that back to maybe a 6-inch or a 3-inch imagery in the rural areas. So that is all custom designed by our customers, and they dictate where we have that. I've talked a lot about 1-inch imagery so far, and that is not to be overstated. 1-inch imagery is a very new thing. We're the first aerial imagery provider to have 1-inch imagery in an oblique setting and single frame ortho setting in the market. And just the amount of detail, that image I showed you of the intersection, that was a 1-inch image. Just so much more detail you can pull out of an image by seeing it from this resolution. It's going to make a lot more decisions easier to make because you're not having to go out in the field as much. You're not having to rely on other sources of data. You can pull a lot of this stuff out directly from the imagery. So we can now do this at scale, capturing entire cities, even entire counties at 1-inch imagery with our massive fleet that we have, about 125 different aircraft. Here's an example of that high resolution image, my little summer home in Florida. I wish it was, but no, it's not. But this looks kind of like it came from a drone, right? But it's actually coming from an aircraft, and you can see the tremendous detail. If I were to take that same sensor and put it over an intersection like this, I can see cracks in the sidewalk. I can see road signs. How many of you have to deal with road sign inventory, right? Understanding where all those road signs are, the condition, what type they are. Here, I can clearly identify them from the image. I can click on the base of the image to get an XY. And in the future, we hope to make that an automated process where we'd make that a deliverable. But we'll talk a little bit more about that later. But this is some of the use cases for this 1-inch imagery. One of the things we're also very, very proud of is our ability to integrate into third-party applications. This is very important because when you are introducing a new aerial imagery platform or new product to your constituents, it's not always easy for them to learn new tech. So if you can embed that imagery into what they're already using, that's a huge leg up. And that's where we really excel, is we have over 150 different third-party integrations that are available throughout different departments. So GIS, public works departments, you can kind of see some of the big names that many of you may recognize. Public safety, it's very important to have that imagery ingrained directly into 911 so that they can locate distressed callers. And tax assessment, they're looking at property, trying to evaluate and assign taxes properly. Having that imagery very quickly at their right hand allows them to make those decisions a lot more quickly and be more efficient in what they do. We have a new API that fits into all of these third parties. And in the public safety side, this new API has the ability to map the Z value of an incoming wireless call. That's extremely important for public safety, for 911 dispatchers and call takers, because if you're calling on a multi-story building or an overpass or a bridge or anything with height, you need to know which level they're on. And by approximating where that call is, that's going to speed up the response time. So a lot of our public safety vendors are taking our new API and they're going to be applying this new ability. So that's pretty exciting. In your world, in the GIS world, we now can produce that 1 to 2 inch image at a mosaic. So all the mosaicing that you're doing or using in GIS and all your GIS needs, we can provide that high resolution mosaic to you when you do that high resolution flyover. And the great thing about that is when from up above, it looks like a normal mosaic, but as you drill in, you're really not losing that quality. You're seeing all of the detail of that 1 to 2 inch image. And then, you always have the obliques, as we've talked about. You have access to those as well. And then coming soon, we will be able to offer a 2-inch certified mosaic. So the ability to have, using ground control and area triangulation on a 1 to 2 inch, we're calling it 2-inch mosaic is a really big leg up. And we're going to be having that available in the very near future. In the off years, a lot of folks will fly with us on maybe every 1 to 2 to 3 years. But then there's off years, sometimes they go with another vendor or they go with a state-sponsored flyover. We want to let everyone know that we do these intermittent flights. We can do ortho only at 3-inch at a very, very low price point to supplement those 1-inch or high resolution flights that you do in your main years. So here's an example of what some of our customers are doing. They'll fly 1-inch oblique in ortho in year 1, and then maybe in the off year they'll just do the 3-inch image so that they have at least some new imagery to use. And then in year 3, it's a repeat of that. So that's a very new product that we're offering, and we're pretty excited to roll that out this year. We also do 3D mesh. We can take this high resolution aerial imagery and we can turn that into a 3D mesh that can be consumed in a variety of different formats, SLPK, and Esri formats being probably one of the most important ones. But you can do all sorts of really great analysis, like sunshade analysis and line of sight and view shed and flood analysis. You can flatten a building and bring in a BIM model so you can see what it would look like to put a new building in the center of your city. These are very affordable and also something that we offer with our flyovers as well. So if you're getting more into 3D, we have a solution for that as well. And we're getting on the train. We have been on the train for a while of doing complex AI and machine learning models on our imagery. So we are able to now pull out things like roof lines and roof slopes and building outlines and pools and roads and a whole bunch of other features that we're working on. We're definitely not all the way there. I'm not going to, tout it up too much, but it's something we're very, very dedicated and committed to. We've put a lot of resources towards it, and we're going to continue to advance this as we go forward. So that's another new exciting thing that we're going to be offering in the very near future. So how do you take all this information and plug it into your Esri environment? Because most of you are living in that world. So just a couple of highlights of how we can do that. So on the oblique side, we've had plugins into ArcMap and ArcPro for years. We always come out with new versions that meet the new versions of Esri. And we have a customized widget that we can add to Esri's web app builder. So a lot of these, imagine you're using it for dissemination of information. You're putting it on public sites and you want to supplement that with oblique imagery. Well, we have solutions there with a web app builder. And we also have ortho services as well. A lot of folks will make their own ortho service. We do deliver our orthos physically every time so that you can have them, on site, on premise. But if you don't want to do the heavy lifting, if you don't want to deal with tiling and all that stuff and serving up all that imagery, we host all that and we can provide a WMS service or WMTS service and do all that lifting for you so that you can pipe it into Esri. You can pipe it into your CAMA or your CAD system or any other third-party app that can consume it. So that's something we've been doing for quite a while, and we're going to be enhancing our service this year. We can take your vector data, we can take your Esri REST services and overlay them on our imagery. We can take layers that you may have in like shapefile or file geodatabase, and we can upload those so that, for example, here's some fire hydrants that have been symbolized to show the fire hydrant. And with our uploader, you have the ability to just bring that right into the oblique imagery. So if you have other departments using our oblique viewer, you have the ability to just kind of visualize that data in the oblique imagery. You can bring in your 3D mesh into ArcPro, as we talked about. So that's a really easy way to bring the 3D mesh in with the SLPK format and perform all those complex analytic measurements. And coming soon, 2 new things we want to tell you about is this quarter, we will have a customized widget for Esri's Experience Builder. So if you're using Experience Builder and you're putting out web apps using that product, we can very soon be able to pull in a customized widget to show the obliques within that application. And then one I'm really excited about at the first quarter of next year is our compatibility with Esri's Oriented Viewer. So this is the ability, Oriented Viewer, if you're not familiar, is kind of a viewer that Esri has made that can consume street level imagery, panoramic, oblique imagery, and video. And it's kind of part and parcel with all of their web apps. So we're going to be able to serve up our oblique imagery in a format that fits the Oriented Viewer, and then no more custom development. You can just get a URL or a link from us and plug it right in and view your oblique imagery in all your Esri apps. So that's real exciting. We have that coming out in the first part of next year. So I know that was fast and furious, but I'm going to hand it over to Claire. She's going to go into a little bit more detail about our certified ortho product and the programs around that. So Claire, it's all you.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. So I'm Claire Kudrowski, and I'm here today representing Eagleview's professional practice group. And this is a group that provides oversight to meet our statutory obligations or any obligations that we have with requests for proposals. Next slide, please. And we're led by Carl Schoenthal. He happens to be a professional engineer licensed in multiple states. We also have a number of professional land surveyors. That includes Justice Saducki, as well as Mick Powers. They're licensed in multiple states. We have actually 2 photogrammetric surveyors, myself and Tom Salter. And there's actually 3 of us that are certified photogrammetrists, which is a nationwide certification. We also have a colleague, Matt Peliquin. He's a certified photogrammetric technician. Naturally, a number of our colleagues are also interested in this nationwide certification. And we have a few GISPs sprinkled throughout the organization. So this group actually oversees any of the certified ortho products. And we consider the certified ortho products the ones that follow the traditional photogrammetric workflow, where we're pre-planning, we're placing ground control, our flight plans are congruent with where our ground control is located. There's usually quality control checks in the processes, that sort of thing. So I'll go into that in a little more detail. Next slide, please. So the certified ortho mosaic, that's what we consider an authoritative source, okay? And it's produced based on either state obligations or obligations because of our response to a request for proposal. We consider it authoritative. and it's authoritative in terms of its positional accuracy. And we, have a number of, like I said, licensed professionals on staff overseeing all those processes, whether it's ground control, flight planning, error triangulation, the checkpoints, and then the last, the deliverables of the deliverables, say, for the horizontal accuracy of those ortho photos. This must be familiar to many of you, okay? And it's the traditional photogrammetric workflow where right from the get-go, we're planning that, that project. We're doing the flight plans along with cross flights, and you'll see a couple of examples of those. When those images are captured, they're actually color balanced slightly. That's because it's usually a very large project area. In terms of error triangulation, we're working with surveyed ground control. We're running a least square bundle adjustment. That's that automatic tie point generation. But we're actually measuring the ground control manually. Naturally, we need to run through that a couple of different times. And we're always refining and looking at those residuals. At the end of that, there may be some additional post-processing. And this is where we end up orthorectifying our images, where we're orthorectifying the image for relief displacement and then compensating for the roll, tip, and yaw of the aircraft. Once that's done, then we create a orthomosaic where we're stitching those images together, but using, using technology that allows us to go around buildings and things like that. That way a building's never cut in half. Okay, you're always looking at just one viewpoint. We do hand off to the True Touch team after the orthomosaic, and this is to deal with those issues such as elevated features, like bridges, especially bridges that have that change elevation. Those nice curved bridges, and other elevated structures. Say, in a utility plant or something, there might be elevated structures as they move goods from one area to another. There's also perhaps a little tweaking finally for image correction in terms of color balancing. Okay, anytime you merge all those images together, it can get a little bland, so we just pop it up at the end. But these are all minor modifications. Next slide, please. So here's an example of flight planning and capture. I mean, this is ideal. Naturally, that's the one we're going to show you. But what I love here is that there's well-distributed ground control. If we were to miss some, or some that were obscured for whatever reason, that's okay. We have enough to compensate for that. Within the middle, you can probably see the middle image actually shows a flight plan going from east to west, west to east. But we also have some cross flights in some key locations. I really like those cross flights on the edges of the project. This can be really helpful, especially if we have mountainous or terrain areas or inaccessible places such as swamps or rivers or high terrain like mountains, that sort of thing. We also have some cross flights going through. What we like to do is have those cross flights go through some existing ground control. All of this allows us to have redundancy in all of our measurements. And that's how the least squares bundle adjustment works. When we have redundancy, we can really feel assured that the result is exactly what we want. So next slide, please. Here's just some information about our ground control points. Naturally, we use either targets. Not everybody likes targets, especially if it's in their right of way. So then again, we may be using what we call picture points or photo identifiable points. When we do that, we're working closely with our surveyors that we have on staff, or if we are sub-consulting out, to ensure that we have all of the information to be assured of which corner point that is. So we're using ground, global positioning systems, GPS coordinates of each location. They're manually measured in the imagery. Okay, naturally we might use the software to drive to it, but we'll actually manually measure it. And this is improving, the positional accuracy. So next slide. Here's an example of error triangulation. So the error triangulation is a least squares bundle adjustment where we're minimizing the sum of the square of the residuals. And what that means is we really don't want the ground control to move that much in the image, okay? And this is an iterative process. So there's a number of post-processing runs where we're looking, we're tweaking, we're dropping out measurements, we're adding them back in, we're evaluating them. So this process allows us to have a high confidence in our end result. And so the end result is actually, accurate horizontal positions, horizontal and vertical positions. The image that you see here, once again, it's a flight plan that goes from east to west, west to east, but we also have a number of cross flights. All of these cross flights were ideally placed, and they look like they're going through the ground control. And that's, like I said, just another level of redundancy, and that's how the error triangulation process works. That is a chart here on our 3-inch, 4-inch, 6-inch, and 9-inch offerings and what residuals we're looking for in those. Next slide. Here's an example. So, I said that earlier I spoke on an orthophoto is a natural photograph that's been corrected for relief displacement. Okay, so the accuracy of the digital terrain model is very important. And there's a number of acronyms that are used kind of interchangeably. And that's kind of, so here is just an example of digital elevation model, digital surface model, and a terrain model. So an elevation model is representing the bare earth surfaces, and it's removed the natural and the built features. It's usually raster, so it's a raster format, similar to an image format. Okay, and in the past we've used 1/3 and 1/9 digital elevation models, but we'd like, that's only when we have to. A digital surface model, on the other hand, it's capturing both the natural and the artificial and the built-up features. So it's like a blanket that gets draped over the countryside. And that is, I call it autocorrelation. A lot of times it's created from image matching, but we also might use the terminology structure for motion. What's nice about this digital surface model, when we've used those, is it's congruent with the imagery because it's from the imagery, all right? A digital terrain model is usually very similar to a digital elevation model, but it's usually in a vector format, and there's additional break lines that help snap that surface to the ground. A lot of times contours are generated from digital terrain models. Okay, so they're all very, very similar, and the words are usually interchangeable, or we in the profession interchange them, but it is important for us to know when we're, what kind of digital surface that we're working from. Next. So here's just an example of the image, a digital surface model or a DEM below it, and then the orthorectified image, which is beneath that. So you can see actually when we're using, if there's a lot of relief, we actually are pulling those pixels. We're actually changing the horizontal location from the raw error triangulated image. So that's why having a digital elevation model that is accurate and timely is really important. So we usually map to north grid up. That's just kind of standard process, so that when you're importing them into your services, that it just comes right in and is overlaid nicely or underlaid nicely with perhaps your vector data. So a lot of times we're asked, can we use your data? And many times we're happy to do that, but we're going to ask a lot of questions on it. Where's the data? Does it cover the area of interest? Because nothing's worse than having to patch, nothing's worse, but we have patched in other data, but how do you handle where they meet? Okay, if they're coming from different data sources, we're going to have to probably do some special integration. We want to make sure that the spacing, the distribution is congruent with the type of data set that you want. If you want a 1-inch, 2-inch, 3-inch ortho image, we're going to want to make sure that we have a highly accurate digital elevation model that's because the component, the ortho, is actually, based a lot on that digital elevation model. We're going to want to make sure that we know what projection it is and that you have that information, because if we have to reproject it, we want to make sure we do that correctly. And we want to make sure that we know the provenance of where that came from and when was it captured. If we're orthorectifying imagery in 2024, a LiDAR data set, which is highly accurate usually, but that was obtained from 2018, there could be a number of changes that could really impact what that end result, meaning that we might have to then correct those localized areas of change. This is the last slide that I have, and it's about mapping standards. So when I started in this profession a number of years ago, we were working with national map accuracy standards, and those were tried and true. Any of us in the photogrammetric profession were used to working with those standards. 1 inch equals 40 feet mapping. There would also be mapping scale for photogrammetry. But those haven't been changed since 1941. And so they needed to be updated. So the next two, the Federal Geographic Data Committee, FGDC, that's just a method of oversight for geospatial decisions that goes across the federal government. So it's actually very, very nice because it provides structure, all right? The NSSDA, the National Standard for Spatial Data Accuracy, I'm very familiar with this, and many of you are too. This is a way of reporting on the horizontal accuracy. It gives a methodology for doing that. And that has been, up until recently, tightly coupled with the American Society of Photogrammetry and Remote Sensing standards. This is a nationwide organization that has developed standards. The first set of standards that we've been using here since I've joined Eagleview were based from 2014. These are sensor agnostic standards that describe the methodologies and the procedures and accuracy requirements for geospatial data sets. They've just been updated. All right, and they've been updated. This is considered version 2, and the date is from 2023. And so we're looking a lot more closely at that. And if you haven't, I encourage you to take a look at that. So that concludes my portion of this discussion. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Claire. So now, guys, I'm gonna stop my share. We're gonna allow Kevin McLeod, who's our regional technical manager in Savannah, Georgia, to talk a little bit about his experiences, both as a customer and as a employee of Eagleview. So, Kevin, if you want to share your screen, that's all you.
Sure thing. I'll just introduce myself briefly. I'm the technical manager for Georgia and the Carolina. Kind of the first point of contact for technical questions in this region. I was previously our GIS developer for a city, county, airport GIS agency, as Joe mentioned. And I'm going to share my screen right now and talk about 4 things that we've been discussing today. 1 inch imagery, certified orthomosaics. Then I'm also going to touch on the disaster response program. And lastly, ancillary data products like Change Finder. Feature extraction, basically, that is based off of this imagery. The first point is on the certified mosaics. So this year in Savannah, we flew a certified ortho mosaic. Normally, if I was in a room of people, I would ask, how tall do you think this building here in the center of the screen is? And, people might guess 1 story to maybe 3 or 4, It turns out it is a little over 20 stories tall. In 2020, we flew 0.75 inch imagery in Savannah, which I'll show in a moment. Looks fantastic. However, it wasn't a certified orthomosaic. So we had building lean, and we even had some of the building cut off there. And in the single frame, you can see the building more accurately, but in each single frame, we weren't the entire building wasn't captured. Now, interestingly enough, we have had other vendors in the county fly orthos for us. This was an ortho, or it's supposed to be. Same for this. Also some building lane. Same for this. You know, only when it came to Eagleview did we really get a true ortho of all of our tallest buildings, all the bridges lined up nicely, all of these issues that Claire's been discussing that can cause some issues like terrain, tall buildings and such. So that's we traded the expense of spatial resolution this year for having a certified ortho. And when we come around the next time, we'll probably do inch or sub-inch again. While I'm in this viewer, this is the public parcel viewer for SAGIS, the City County Airport GIS agency that I developed for our county. I actually developed a custom pictometry widget before we had an official built-in one. It behaves a little differently. There are some, advantages to it and some pros and cons, but this demonstrates the customizability of our platform. Our API or application programming interface is very flexible and very straightforward to develop for. And again, this is Web App Builder, and as Joe noted, Experience Builder widgets are coming. They also work if you have an on-premise portal, for example. I'm going to now go to the Connect Explorer map viewer. This is our version of ArcGIS Online. This is our map viewer, our flagship map viewer that internal staff at county and city departments use. And this is the 0.75-inch imagery that we flew in Savannah. This is Broughton Street, our main drag here, kind of our equivalent of Bourbon Street or King Street in Charleston. I would like to point out a couple things. One, we can see features like fire hydrants, manholes. We even, because of our tight flight lines that Claire mentioned, we have many what we call alternates. For example, if we go over to Leopold's Ice Cream, which is kind of a landmark here. If I click on the alternate here, notice the kids next to the fire hydrant, there are 3. And then if we go to the alternate, there's only 1. This is even on the same day, March 7th. One advantage we have is we fly very low altitude, very tight flight lines. Assessors really like how they have multiple views, even from the same cardinal direction, in case of maybe a shadow, maybe even a box truck parked in front of a feature you're trying to see. This is something very common where you're trying to see an HVAC or a door, but the UPS truck parked in front of it. As we come back later that day, or maybe the following day, we have an alternate image. So seeing this is great. Seeing all this detail, seeing these infrastructure assets is great. However, GIS folks, we often go out in the field to survey these in with a Trimble, right, with a GPS unit. When I worked in construction and engineering long ago, they drilled in that the most dangerous thing your staff will do is drive, right, of all the things that they do. So we often trace things off the imagery. And when you're looking at the ortho, oftentimes you don't know whether it's a fire hydrant, whether it's a trash can. When you're looking at something vertically, oftentimes you can't discriminate what this object is. Even if you can, tying GIS analysts' time up by just tracing things on imagery, you could be doing analysis. You could be doing things that only GIS professionals could do. Wouldn't it be nice if you could offload the task of digitizing? This map viewer is so easy to use and so user-friendly that you can do just that. The annotate panel here under all of our measure tools allows you to place marker symbols, say on a fire hydrant or a manhole. And there's all sorts of other various symbols we can use. Maybe we want to put one on the manhole. And here is the key. And in fact, even if we do a measurement, maybe we do a distance, you can actually export out these measurements and annotations and sketches, points, lines, and polygons to a KML. You can import this to ArcGIS. You can digitize on the oblique. Because it's so user-friendly, you can have other departments like the water department, the fire department, digitize your hydrants, your manholes, and so on. And you can even share and make folks users or viewers or editors and collaborate on this sketch. This is useful for public safety events, sketching out things beforehand, line of sight, and that kind of thing. So that kind of covers the use case of 1-inch imagery, being able to see features at that detail and then digitize them and turn them into map layers. Now, our 3D mesh that Joe had mentioned provides incredible detail. This is inside of ArcGIS Pro here. We can see the Iowa Stadium here. And we can do things, for example, like line of sight. Get the zoom tool out of the way here. Do a view shed, and we can see the shadow that the goalposts cast. That's pretty cool. Go ahead and close that. And if we look at this example here in Savannah, we did a 3D mesh of the entire city this year. And again, you know, it looks great, right? Phenomenal. This is the City Hall. You can do things, again, like view shed, line of sight. You can also, as Joe mentioned, in building models from AutoCAD and other CAD and building information modeling platforms. And then you can flatten the earth where a particular building is. Now, I've drawn out 2 specific polygons here, but I'll show you in real time just to see that this turkey wasn't pre-cooked in the oven. You can mask and show just one building. You can flatten just a particular area. Little click here. There we go. Replace. So this replace is the flatten function. Maybe we're building a hotel and we just demolished the city hall, right? And we want to see how that looks. Or maybe the skyscraper we were looking at, the the skyscraper we're looking at in the certified ortho mosaic. Let's go ahead and flatten it. Come on, click. So you can even see the shadow that it casts. That's pretty cool. And editing these are as simple as right-clicking on the 3D mesh, and then you click on Modify, and you then add a modification in an editor. You can then interactively draw. So I've got the editor panel open here, and maybe I want to just see a building. So if I take this here and I draw a mask feature, now I see just the building, right? Mask is the opposite of replace, which is the flatten function. So it's that simple. And then lastly, I want to talk about the disaster response program. As the planning chief in this county through Hurricane Irma and Matthew, we got hit by Category 1 and 2 hurricanes respectively. And 48 hours after Hurricane Matthew, we had imagery across the affected section of the city and county. And that was phenomenal. And it provided at no additional cost as part of our contract. And in neighboring Bryan County, this is a great example. They had an F4 tornado last year. This is what their county building. Most of their county departments are in this one little building. You know, we have small rural counties here in Georgia. And this is what it looked like before the tornado. All right, it hit Thursday night. I got the call. We flew on Friday afternoon. Monday morning, they had all five angles of imagery, right? The blue tarp imagery. They had all 5 angles of this imagery. No additional cost. And they actually, I can show you where his office is. It's now in a FEMA trailer. Another advantage of Eagleview is when neighboring counties are flying, your county can see your neighbor's imagery and vice versa. And so when Savannah flew this year, the imagery I was just showing everyone, the ortho mosaic, that was the 2023 imagery. This is that imagery. It reached all the way into their county and covered most of their county. So they get this at no cost. This helps first responders to cross jurisdictional lines for mutual aid, cross jurisdictional planning. Quint, who's the GIS manager, his office is in this trailer right here. So, and of course, lastly, as Joe mentioned, we integrate with Esri. So you can see a lot of the layers here. These vector layers are from their Esri REST service, like address points and parcel lines. The last thing I'll show is Change Finder. So we provide feature extraction based off of the imagery. One thing we do is building outlines. Let's say we fly in 2020, we fly in 2023. In Savannah, this was 2017 compared to 2015. And we draw the outlines, we draw them again, we compare to find where all the new buildings are and where all the changes are. The tax assessors get a lot of return on investment out of this. It helps them to prioritize field visits, and a lot of the measuring they can even do completely from the imagery without having to go on site. And so this is an example of the Pooler City Hall. On the left side is 2020, 2012. On the right side, which was the original image we were comparing against 2017 actually, but I'm showing 2020 because it's that high resolution. We demolished a lot of buildings. The purple are demolished. The green are new structures, right, that were built that were not there. And then additions, changes, are in red. And you can customize these colors. And this is actually like a layer list, kind of, like in an Esri viewer here. And we can see this building increased in size. You can even sort by, size of change and type of change. And you can break this up amongst different tax districts, so different appraisers can review their, respective chunk of parcels to divvy up the review work. And then the last thing I want to note is that we've been flying since 2003 here in Savannah. And as Joe mentioned, we have long been covering large swaths of the country. So there's a lot of historic imagery available, both traditional imagery as well as the disaster imagery, which is denoted in the date picker usually as a disaster response. So I will turn over my screen here.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Kevin. So folks, we only got about 5 more minutes here and then we'll take some questions. Just one more thing on use cases. Just want to touch briefly on the use of our orthos for Next Gen 911. It's a big initiative that most folks are dealing with right now. And by having a very accurate ortho, you're able to redo your GIS layers in a manner that's going to fit the Next Gen 911 standards. This may look familiar to a lot of you folks. You have a GIS layer, and then when you actually bring in updated imagery, they're not lining up exactly right because maybe they were drawn on poor imagery or not as accurate imagery in the past. So it's going to help you line that up to be more spatially accurate. It's going to allow you to put building address points on buildings where they belong and not, maybe in the very front of the parcel or somewhere, you don't want them to be. And there's other scenarios like this where, it's maybe hard to see on the screen, but on the left side, you'll see a road in blue, and that was the old road. And if somebody was calling 911, let's say that's a rapid SOS ping on the phone icon, on the left side image, that's saying that person's on the left side of the road. So that's where people are going to be looking for that person. When in actuality, that road layer was off considerably, and that person is actually on the right side of the road. Now, in this example, that seems pretty obvious, you'd see them, but imagine if it was, quite a bit further off the road, if there's a lot of vegetation, that could really slow down that response time. So it's really important to have accurate data, your street data, for not only location, but also for routing, making sure that you have an accurate street network for routing and accurate address points. So those are really important use cases for having up-to-date and accurate orthos. So last thing I'm going to talk about briefly, then we'll take some questions, is our disaster response program. As you all know, large, extremely dangerous and costly weather events are on the rise. We're having more and more of them every year. And if you are an Eagleview customer, we'll actually come and fly imagery at no additional cost. So I'll show you some examples here. This has just happened this past April in the city of Wynn in Arkansas. And you can see the school here. And after this tornado ripped through the town, you can see what it looked like. We were able to turn around imagery to the city of Wynn within under 48 hours. So we were able to turn that around very, very quickly. Because we have 125 planes, we have them scattered around the country, and we can respond to events like this very, very quickly. Tornadoes, we actually we have to wait, make sure we can get a plane there. Things like hurricanes, we can actually plan in the days and almost weeks ahead of time because we know where they're about to go and we can kind of stage planes appropriately. So the use case is not only for GIS, but also in all departments within local government at the county or state level. Helps with safety assessment, the rescue efforts, response planning. How are we going to tackle this cleanup? What is the damage assessment? Having a very up-to-date image, knowing, understanding what exactly happened with that storm, what are the destroyed structures, which ones are salvageable, and so on. And it's importantly, it really helps you recover that aid that you request from FEMA. If you can prove, especially if you have imagery before, here's what everything looked like a year or two ago, here's what it looked like yesterday, and then it's going to be very easy, a lot easier anyway, to get those FEMA requested funds. And again, its use cases stretch in all parts of local government, and you can kind of read through the different departments there. But as you can imagine, there's a lot of use of high resolution, timely imagery after a storm. So here's the kind of the nuts and bolts of it. So every single one of our Eagleview contracts, every single one by default, has a disaster response program built into it. And what that says is that if you are an existing customer and the storm hits a certain criteria, so we can't come by and, if it gets a little windy tomorrow, we can't come by and fly it that. It's got to meet a certain threshold of a hurricane of a certain strength and a tornado of a certain strength and an earthquake of a certain Richter scale rating, so on. And if it meets that criteria, then we will fly up to 200 square miles at no additional cost and provide it to you as fast as possible. We can't always guarantee it'll be there in a day. There's a lot of factors I'll talk about in a moment, but that is our promise that we will fly after these storms. And we probably activated this program 20 to 30 times in 2023 for various customers along the coastlines and in the central part of the country with tornadoes, and in the west coast with mudslides. If it is things that are not covered by this, like that happen a little bit more frequently, like floods, like mudslides, volcanic activity, we will work with our customers and offer it at a very, very discounted rate, maybe just to cover our cost, and that's about it. So we will work with our customers on things that don't necessarily fit the criteria. But again, we will get it up as fast as we can. Like I said, we usually get it in between 24 and 48 hours, sometimes even faster. Some of the limitations are just simply mobilizing the airplane. Has the storm passed? A lot of times in a flood, for example, the storm is going to linger on for a few days and we can't get our pilots up in the air safely. If it's a fire, we maybe not be able to fly because there's still lingering smoke. If it's a hurricane and the president wants to visit, there's no planes flying around that day. So those are the things we have to worry about. It's hard to get in touch with our main contact sometimes if the power's knocked out. How do we coordinate this flyover? Where are we flying when it's hard to get in touch with our folks? And just the logistics of shipping a hard drive from one location to another. Earlier this year, or maybe it was last year, we actually had a train of Eagleview employees from Louisiana all the way back up to Rochester, New York, driving in stretches of 6 to 10 hours at a time, passing it off to the next person. And we had about a 4-person chain to give that imagery back to Rochester within the day, and then it had it up to our customers the following day. So we are very, very dedicated to providing that imagery to our customers as quickly as possible. Here's just some brief examples of this. This is one of the first ones that we did of New Orleans. You can kind of see obviously the terrible flood that happened after Hurricane Katrina, and the devastating floods. That they had that before imagery just a year before. It was their first flyover with us, and then they were able to compare that to what had happened after the storm went through. This is a really good example of one in Colorado where they actually had building outlines marking all the buildings. It may be hard to see, but they're there in yellow. And then as these floods came through the canyon, they just completely wiped out all of those buildings, but they had the outlines there before. So they were able to tell where those buildings were instead of just guessing or relying on old photos. So that's a very positive use case for having building outlines ahead of time. Fires, this is real valuable here. Again, don't mean to do this for shock value, but just to show you, how valuable the imagery can be if you can understand that a whole block is lost. That helps, with so many different departments, not to mention insurance and all that side of things. But from the recovery effort, it's really important to have this. And then most recently in Southern Florida, we had a Hurricane Ian that came through, and you can kind of see some of the before and after there. So these are things that we're doing constantly. And again, if you live in those parts of the country that are affected by storms, it is a really valuable clause to have in there. It's a safety blanket that you never hope you have to use. But if it does happen, we're there for you. And we wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that. So with that, we only have about 5 minutes left. We had a lot of information covered today. There has been some questions put through in the chat. but we're certainly willing to answer any questions that you folks have.
Thank you, Joe. Like he said, please feel free to put your question in the chat. We still have a couple minutes, and I'm happy to read it and have them answer it.
We got a few times from a few different people is about sharing up. Just so you know, if I mentioned earlier, if you're a county entity and you want to capture imagery with us, you can share it laterally across the departments that you're in. If you're in a county, you can share it laterally. But if you want to go up that, like to a state, the state would have to actually have their own account with us to access the imagery of the whole state. So you can share down and you can share laterally, but sharing up they'd have to get a separate account with us.
Yeah. Hey, Joe, if I can jump on that. When I worked in the South Carolina National Guard prior to joining the county, we had what we call like a viewing account. So many state agencies like state DOTs, state EMAs or National Guards will have a statewide account, an all-seeing account where they can see all the imagery in all the counties in their state. In other words, the counties are the ones typically who fly it, although not always. We have done some state and regional projects as well, where that's the project originator. But very commonly, a state will have an account so that their agency or agencies, the staff, can log in. The state Department of Health and Environmental Control in South Carolina also has an account, as well as the National Guard, to see all of their infrastructure across the state. The National Guard wants to see all of their armories. We have probably 3/4 of the counties in South Carolina. So for those counties, the National Guard can log in and they can see all the oblique and ortho imagery from us. And it stays updated and everything like that, just as if they were at every county. So hopefully that helps.
We also got a question about LiDAR. Can we fly LiDAR with oblique and ortho imagery capture? We actually, as a company, used to do that in-house, but we've scaled that back a bit, and we have a variety of approved LiDAR vendors that we will outsource that to. So whenever we have a LiDAR inquiry, you can put the LiDAR on our paper, and then we can have our third-party partners capture it at a time that lines up with our imagery capture. So as Kevin was mentioning earlier, or I'm sorry, as Claire was mentioning earlier, you want to make sure that if you're doing a LiDAR capture to have a good DEM for the the certified ortho, you want them flown around the same time. So we can coordinate that with our vendor partners. We have 6 to 10 different vendors that we use depending on where you are in the country, and they'll be able to capture LiDAR at the spec that you need it flown at. Yep, and we do, as Kevin mentioned, we do fly 4-band as well. So that is an option. If you need that 4th band, the near infrared, that is something that we can fly with our current fleet today.
We do have LiDAR expertise in-house, however, and oftentimes some of that LiDAR that is sourced through us is QC'd by Eagleview employees.
Thanks, Claire. Yeah.
It looks like there's a question from Eric that just came in. Claire mentioned that certified imagery is designed to meet state or local accuracy standards. Is this something you custom determine with each client?
Yes, well, a number of states have requirements that you must be licensed in their state. I'm thinking of Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, Oregon. And so it needs to be overseen by a licensed professional from start to finish. And so we have those designations, we have those licenses. And then in other states, a lot of times they might just call out, having a licensed professional land surveyor for that state, or a certified photogrammetrist. In addition, there are some communities or state agencies or clients that request a specific accuracy, horizontal accuracy. So all of that is looked at with great interest from the professional practice group to ensure that we're meeting those standards. So let me just go back and make sure that I answered your question. Yes. So in a sense, yes, it is custom determined. I mean, it's a professional service, and that's how we treat that.
Well, it looks like it's at the top of the hour, so I just want to once again say thank you to Joe and Kevin and Claire for coming on and giving this phenomenal presentation and having such a large engagement with the audience. Eagleview team, do you have any last words?
I want to say thank you to you, Amy, and Nizjik. We really appreciate you helping us put this webinar on, and we really value our partnership with you, and we look forward to many more years of this to come. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you. And thank you to the audience for coming and joining us today. All of you have a wonderful afternoon.
Thank you.